Welcome to the Every Brain is Different podcast. It is Samantha and Lauren here with you. And last week we talked about masking at school, how your child might mask at school and then they come home and they have just meltdowns and you don't understand what you're doing wrong because they're great at school, or they're even like great at their grandparents' house and they're great everywhere else but for you. And that could be because they are masking at those other places and you're not doing anything wrong. So just remember that you're not doing anything wrong. Your child isn't doing anything wrong. Your child isn't being manipulative and they're not choosing to behave differently at home. It is a nervous system issue. So home
And you are
explosions.
safe.
Yeah. And you are their safe person. So the reason why this happens, well, could be, is because home is their safest place to release stress. They know that you're going to love them no matter what. They know you're not going to freak out on them. They know that they're safe. And so that's why they had the explosions there, because it's been building up all day long and then they just explode at home. And then, well, this happens because your child has spent the entire day masking, compensating for different things, suppressing what they actually want to do, and just trying to survive, honestly. Like, it really is like a fight or flight response where they're just trying to get through the day.
I think you should look at it as you've been successful in teaching them to cope as best they can in all of these other areas, that they're not having those explosions there and that they are waiting to get home. And so I think you should kind of take that as a win.
Yeah, for sure. I think you should definitely take it as a win that you are providing a safe place where they feel safe enough to let themselves be themselves.
Yeah.
And just as a reminder, masking is hiding neurodivergent traits to appear more socially acceptable or appear more quote unquote typical. So this can include making eye contact when it's not comfortable for them, or where they're at suppresses stimming, or they tell them to stay quiet, or they're trying to copy peers. They're being forced to comply with different things that makes their body uncomfortable. They're hiding sensory distress. They're stopped from scripting conversations. So scripting can be like they're saying something over and over again, or they watched a TV show and they're saying different parts of the TV show, and that can calm their nervous system down. It's a form of stimming. So if you're suppressing that, then that could cause some issues in the nervous system. And then they might just over monitor their behavior because they want to appear socially acceptable or the same as their peers, and they feel like they're not going to be accepted by their peers. And this chronic masking creates a chronic stress response where they're always in fight or flight. They have cognitive overload, nervous system fatigue, emotional suppression. We talked about all this in the last episode, so you can go listen to more about that. But one part of being neurodivergent is having executive functioning dysfunction, and masking requires an enormous amount of executive functioning, like power. And so it just kind of disrupts that. So they spend all day monitoring body language, decoding social expectations, suppressing movement, tolerating sensory overwhelm, and trying not to get in trouble, as we would say. And so this just creates a whole lot of issues.
An empty battery. An
Yeah,
empty
it creates
battery
an
of
empty battery.
executive function.
Yeah, exactly. So next week, we're going to talk about something called the polyvagal theory, and it's more about the nervous system. So we're going to talk about how masking can disrupt that, and we're going to get more into it next week. But today, we are going to finish talking about how to help your child feel safe at school so they don't explode anywhere, because they don't like exploding at home. They don't like having meltdowns at home. And so we're going to just talk about that. But another reason why they often blow up at home is because of after school restraint collapse. And this is a well documented pattern is by the time they get home, your child's nervous system crashes, sensory overwhelm catches up, emotional suppression releases, and demands become intolerable. And so the meltdown at home is not proof that your child is fine at school and that they're having a hard time at school. So, some common signs of distress that they're having a hard time at school could be aggression after school, crying over small things, refusing to do homework, just completely shutting down. So my kids did this a lot where they would just completely shut down if you asked them to do something and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't talk. They would go into a fetal position and just not do anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am a terrible parent because I can't get them to do anything. And their teacher, they're fine at school. Well, this is a sign that they're not fine at school. And then irritability, like just being generally irritable. And then they want to control everything at home. So, for example, if you're playing a game, like one of my kids likes to play doctor. And so we were playing doctor, and she's like, well, what's going on today? And I said, oh, and I said some problem. She's like, no, your problem is your stomach hurts. And so she has to control every aspect of the game. She'll be like, I want you to say this. Now you say this. Now you say this. And so that's a sign that she's not okay at school because she has to over control everything at home. And then sibling conflict is another one, needing complete isolation. So when my oldest son went to school, we had to give him his own room because he needed to be completely alone. He could not function if he was sharing a room and didn't have somewhere to go where that was completely his. He could completely be alone, and he just needed that. And then increased PDA behaviors. If your child has pathological demand avoidance, this is just all increased. And we saw that with my oldest son when he was having trouble at school, where he would just refuse to do anything. Like he would come home from school and be like, hey, how's it going? And he would just completely shut down and start crying. And I'm like, okay. And so now he doesn't do that anymore because he doesn't go to school. And that was the right option for him. But there are ways to help at school other than just not going to school anymore. But that was just the right option for him. So, some signs your child may be masking at school. Some other ones is they appear quiet at school, but explosive at home. So, they're the good kid, quote unquote, good kid at school. They don't talk, they do everything they're supposed to do, but then at home, they're super explosive. Or they might mimic their peers excessively because they're trying to understand like appropriate behavior at school, or they're trying to be like their peers so that they're more accepted. And then they have different personalities in different environments. They script conversations, over apologize. They fear getting in trouble. And so that's why they're like the good kid, because they're like really afraid of getting in trouble. They avoid asking for help. They suppress their stems. So, if they want to rock, if they want to script, if they want to move, like they'll just suppress all of those. And then they won't use the bathroom all day and just come home completely depleted. So your child might not even know that they're doing this. They might not even understand it consciously. They could just like internally know that they're safer when they hide themselves, but they might not admit that to themselves, or they might not even know that it's happening. And so masking can disconnect kids from their body cues, from their emotions, from their preferences, from their authentic identity, because subconsciously they're trying to hide themselves. And I think that's when it does the most. I have no research to back this up, but I think that's when it does the most harm, is when it's subconscious, because they don't know why they feel uncomfortable. They just know they feel uncomfortable. And so they can't address it because they don't even know they're doing it. And it affects the nervous system. So, some things you can help your child with at school is to reduce the nervous system load before school. So you can have sensory friendly clothing. If they really don't like wearing jeans, don't make them wear jeans to school. If jeans are uncomfortable for them, don't make them wear them to school. Like, they're already uncomfortable before they get to school, is what I'm trying to say. And so that will decrease that. And then make sure they get adequate sleep, have protein in their breakfast, reduce rushed mornings. I know that's super hard, especially like my kids like to sleep in, and then I had to wake them up for school sometimes. And then it's just a rush because I wait to wake them up because I want them to sleep as long as possible. And then it's just a rush, 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 rush. And that they're already in fight or flight by the time they leave because they've been rushing around so much. And then create predictable routines. So you can have, the visual routines or written down or just verbally telling them whatever works for your kid, but have a predictable routine. Like, you get up, you get dressed, you do all the different things that you're supposed to do in the morning, and then you go to school. And prioritize regulation over compliance. So you can ask yourself, what helps my child feel safe instead of how do I make them behave? And I think this is super important. And I know it's hard because other people like to judge your parenting. I don't understand why people judge parenting so much, but people like to judge you. So just think about your child first and what makes them feel safe, and prioritize that over what other people think, over what you think is right for society. Like, it's going to be okay. And then advocate for safe supports at school. So you can have movement breaks, sensory tools, headphones, flexible seating. I was so happy. I went into a school the other day and they had like 3 different kinds of seats for kids to sit on. I saw 3 different chairs in the room. There was like a rocking chair and a tea stool and a normal chair. And I was so excited to
Amazing.
see that. Yeah, yeah, it was awesome.
Super awesome.
Yeah. And then have safe adults. So when they feel uncomfortable, they can go talk to that adult and just have them know that they can go talk to them. And then talk to the teachers and reduce eye contact expectations. Just,
Why that's still a thing these days is mind blowing to me.
yeah, I have no idea. I'm so over it because I went to the school, like I said, and there's a teacher that was like, look in my eyes when I talk to you. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like,
Yeah.
stop it. Like, if they're
There's
talking and yeah,
there's just like other ways to know that you have someone's attention besides eye contact.
yeah. And like we've said before, if they're making eye contact with you, they're probably not listening to you.
Exactly. Because they're
So
focused
just,
on making eye contact with you
yeah,
and they don't
yeah,
like it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then also at school, you can have visual schedules, breaks from social demands. So my son has a really hard time at recess, so he gets to stay inside during recess unless he wants to go outside. Like, they always give him the choice. But if he's feeling really overwhelmed with socialness for the day, he can stay inside and go help a teacher or do something like that other than going outside and being with his peers because it's overwhelming to him. And I really like that they give him the choice. They don't force him to go outside. They don't force him to stay inside. They just say, okay, what do you want to do today? And I love that. And then stop rewarding extreme compliance. So children are praised all day long for being quiet, being easy, being mature, never being disruptive. And this may be because they're actually suppressing themselves. And I noticed this at school the other day. I went to an awards assembly, and the majority of the awards went to girls. And I'm wondering if that's because, and I'm not saying that teachers do this consciously, but girls are seen as having better behavior than boys because they don't have as much movement that they need typically.
Girls have masking superpowers.
Yeah, and girls have masking superpowers. And I was like, so the girls are getting rewarded, and the boys see that, and they're like, well, what am I doing wrong? And it's not that they're doing anything wrong. There's just a huge difference between boys and girls. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that, but I just noticed that yesterday, and I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. So anyway, and then the next one is to build authenticity at home. So when they're at home, allow stimming, allow sensory preferences, allow recovery time, allow time for special interests, autonomy, preferred clothing, and communication differences. So allow all of that at home. That's probably why you're their safe place. But if you allow that at home, they will be less likely to be overwhelmed at school because they're so chill at home. So the next one is to teach self-advocacy. And I think this is the most important one. When they're at school, help your kids know how to say, my body feels overwhelmed. I need a break. That's too loud. I need movement. I don't understand. Have them advocate for themselves and practice that at home so they know what they can do when they're at school. And the last segment we're going to talk about is what not to do. So avoid saying, why are you having a meltdown? And if they say, well, because I had a really hard day at school, do not say, well, your teacher said you're fine, so you must be fine. No, explore that. And then don't force eye contact. Don't push them to go past what they can handle. So don't encourage being overwhelmed. And we can subconsciously do that. Like, oh, you're fine. Like, all these things are happening. You're fine. You're fine. It's fine. And don't require constant social engagement. So, like my son, if he doesn't want to go out to recess because he's socially like just depleted, don't make him go out to recess if that is a thing you can do at the school. And then overscheduling after school, they don't need to be in all the things. I know that a lot of parents are like, oh, I want my kid to do this. I want them to do this. I want them to do this. Just let them be. If they want to do those things, that's great. But also, you're the parent. And if they say, well, I want to do piano and I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do this, be like, okay, we're going to pick two things a week that you get to do after school.
I think the same for therapy. Like
Oh, yeah.
prioritize the therapy that you really think is going to be most beneficial.
Yeah.
Because I know there are some cases like one therapy after the other, and no one wants that. That's a lot.
Yeah, like kids don't want to be in therapy all day before and after school and then go to school all day. Like, that's a lot.
Like,
And so just think
yeah.
about that. Oh, I love that you brought that up. That's awesome. So, some children become so good at masking that adults miss their distress entirely. So, just look for these little things because just because they look fine doesn't mean that they are fine. And just remember to prioritize connection over correction, over performance, over all those things. Because when kids need to mask less, their regulation improves, emotional explosions often decrease, self-esteem improves because they're not getting in trouble, anxiety decreases, and connection deepens. So if this was useful to you, I hope that it was. Share it with a friend. And if you want more insights or more help with this, you can always send us a message or join the neurodivergent parenting community. So you can go to everybrainisdifferent.com for that. And we hope you have a good week.
Yes.